Okay, so we're recording. Okay, everyone, thank you for coming. Hi, and thanks for attending TopRight's third public forum and webinar entitled Doing Well by Doing Good, an exploration of the changing world of CSR and a new era of social transformation. TopRight and Forthright Partners organized this event together with special help from Matt Fisher of Forthright Partners, who's in our audience today. Matt Fisher and TopRight CMO Chris Weissman are producing a white paper together on this topic, tentatively titled A New Era of Corporate Social Responsibility. Do read their co-written article on our blog and do sign up for the TopRight blog if you have time. And do be in touch with me or anyone from TopRight if you'd like to receive a copy of the completed white paper. Chris, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Chris, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Some quick technical things. If you are not a speaker today, please turn off your mic and your camera. If you are a speaker, you can leave your camera on, which you can switch off as you like during the event, but do make sure that it's on with your microphone as well when it comes to your time to speak. This event, just so everyone knows, will be recorded. It's being recorded right now. We will provide a link to it post-event. It'll be hosted on our website as well. In the last 15 minutes of today's webinar, hopefully by then the technology on my side will be a bit better, there will be a question and answer session for speakers. How this works is anyone may ask a question. All you need to do this is during the event at any time, write a question in the chat box, which can be found in the toolbar in the center of your screen, the lower center of your screen. And on that same toolbar, you can find controls for your mic and your camera as well. At the end of the event, I will be selecting questions and calling on people on a first come, first served basis. We'll do about 15 minutes of questions at the very end of the hour. We have 6 speakers today who we will hear from in sets of 2. Our speakers include Stacy Cole of Comcast, who will speak with Adam Alonzo of Build Chicago, Steve Lazauskas of Waste Zero, speaking with Jillian Wilson Martin of the town of Natick, Massachusetts, and Sheila Weidman of Georgia Pacific, speaking with Kathy Kolbenson of Chris 180. Our moderator today is Chris Hooper, chair and founder of Conscious Capitalism, an advocacy organization that promotes the positive evolution of capitalism in society. We're very thankful to Chris and all others who are participating in or attending this event today. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Chris Cooper.
All right. Thank you, Tyson. Appreciate it. Glad to see everyone on the line today, our speakers, as well as I see 30 some odd people on the line, so thanks for joining us. We're going to keep all introductions fairly brief today to get to the material, so I'll do the same with mine and keep it brief. But my background is in consumer marketing and advertising. Big global brands, big global ad agencies, and I was always fascinated by companies who seem to be very successful in building brands and customer loyalty without traditional marketing. And as I read about some of those brands like Southwest Airlines, Whole Foods, Container Store, they were all involved in something called conscious capitalism, which I was not familiar with. But I got involved in that group about 4 years ago. I'm the founder of the Atlanta chapter of Conscious Capitalism. And Conscious Capitalism, in brief, was founded by John Mackey of Whole Foods. Its purpose is to elevate humanity through business. Business can do more than it does just creating jobs, which is vital, but there's more that companies can do, and today's a great manifestation of that. And it revolves around 4 tenets, which are higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, caring cultures, and conscious leadership, which is really the ability to put all those other factors together. And obviously companies' involvement with communities as a stakeholder and nonprofits in the area is a big part of that. So that's just a quick bit of my background. The seminar today, again, Doing Good by Doing Well, a modern look at the new era of corporate social responsibility, or the term modern CSR has been used. And there's some old models of CSR that are falling by the wayside for the most part. What I've often called the 3 W's. You write a check, you write a press release, and you write it off. Very bare bones approach to CSR. The article that Tyson referred to, that Chris Weissman and Matt Fisher wrote, on the new era of corporate responsibility, talks about often it's been PR crisis, find a relevant nonprofit, make a donation, apologize for what happened, and do a press tour. that's also a pretty bare bones way to do it. But the evolving way, and this is what this article that Chris Weissman and Matt Fisher wrote is about, is how you build ongoing relationships, how companies on the corporate side can have a strategy, the type of CSR they want to do, find the partners that fit it, share the values, and build an eco structure around CSR that's on an ongoing basis. And there's a great passage in that article I'll briefly read, which says, this means not just participating in fundraisers, but pre-building messaging and strategy into a social engagement infrastructure that is meaningful, effective, relevant, and ongoing. And ongoing is really what we're going to talk about here today with our three sets of two speakers each and the relationships that they have. And I'm going to be try to make this a lightly moderated session and have the two pairs of speakers really interact with each other and almost ask each other questions. I'll facilitate as need be, but there are three questions that we ask each of the speaker groups to think about, and they're around strategy, execution, and learning. And the questions are, why is this partnership a good strategic fit for your organization? Both a good fit for the nonprofit and for the corporate partner. What makes the relationship work for each of you, the execution of the relationship? And finally, what can others learn from your experience in this partnership? And others, meaning mainly people who are on this call today who can learn from your experience. So with that, let me start with our first speaker group. Again, Stacy Cole. Stacy's the Divisional Director of Government and Community Affairs for Comcast Cable. She's been at Comcast for 15 years and has a legal background and was once the attorney for the city of Atlanta. And then her partner in this exercise is Adam Alonso, CEO of Build Chicago. And Adam has been in that role for about 5 years and has a background in academia and his social work, both leadership and hands-on social work in the field. And I'm going to ask Adam to start. I'll ask each of the nonprofit partners to start these pairs to talk about your organization and what your mission is,
Sure.
And how it fits with the corporate partner. Adam?
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. And good afternoon, everybody. Again, Adam Alonso, CEO of Build. And Build is a 51-year-old youth service organization. We are one of the first street gang intervention programs in the city of Chicago. And over the years, we've really integrated more opportunities to support families and young people through this time. Our work really is centered around serving communities that have the highest risk factors, so for violence, poverty, and really trying to make an impact and a dent in the work that we do. And that's Build in a nutshell of the work that we do.
All right. Stacy, do you want to talk about how the work that these guys do fits with your objectives at Comcast?
Certainly. Build is a strong community partner that is a longstanding partner, has a strong reputation in the Chicago community, and is embedded in the community and the constituents that we seek to serve. Comcast, with our philanthropic strategy, it has evolved over a period of time, and it's really designed to address digital equity and the digital divide, if you will. And with Build having such a deep relationship with the precise constituents that we seek to serve, it's just a natural fit and partnership for us to work together as we execute on some of our programs.
And Chris, when you mentioned sort of why is this a strategic fit for Build and for Comcast, and certainly from our point of view, and I think everything that we've learned during this time of pandemic and shelter in place, and schools here in Chicago are remote, it's been a great fit because it really speaks to a dire need that we have, right? Our fit right now, we're a lift zone site, which means that Comcast has installed their equipment here that allows us to provide internet to young people and households here throughout our space. So we're doing e-learning during the day. We have families that need a space for their children to be at. And so within our building, of course, following all guidelines, socially distanced, masked up as it is today, we've got lift zones, right? And a lot of the neighbors and young people that we serve here need access to internet, need access to affordable internet, certainly through the Internet Essentials program. And so when we think about how this partnership is a great fit, We have all the constituents who are in need of a service and a product, and we have a great partner such as Comcast, which is really trying to find solutions to make it affordable and free to communities that are struggling and need access and support. And I think certainly that's where the fit starts. I mean, we have a long-standing relationship with Comcast that's about 10 years old, actually. And so it goes deeper than sort of this immediate lift zone. There have been Internet Essentials Launch, which is their low-cost, easy, affordable internet for homes, and also having laptops available to young people. I know that we've spent a lot of time during the spring and certainly now with school year making sure that our young people have a laptop so they can, do the work and log on. And so thinking about just those two pieces sort of alone, it makes us a great fit. And Stacey, I think you would agree, but what else do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. The one thing about the pandemic is that it has really exacerbated all of the ills of society, if you will. And one of the things is that it really required us to accelerate a solution to the digital divide, if you will. And lift zones, in addition to Internet Essentials, they're tools in the toolbox to help us address these issues. And part of the problem is that the children that Build serves, I mean, those children are those that would be left behind in a digital divide. The digital divide has, Congressman Lewis once stated that the digital divide is really the civil rights issue of our time, if you will, creating a have and have-nots. And the beauty of our relationship is that we're able to address this issue with a fabulous partner that's embedded in the community and provides us with the constituents that we specifically seek to serve.
Mm-hmm. And I think about, to your other point about what makes it work, I thought it was really interesting when you talk about make your contribution, do your press release, and then go on to the next thing, right? As if you dropped your kind of stake in the game and you walked away. But Comcast has not done that, certainly with Build, and the partnership has been strong. We have a board member who has intimately tied to the work of Build, Jack Siegel. And Jack, I know you're on the call, so glad you're here. And someone who cares passionately about the work that the organization does, but is always thinking, like, what are the ways in which we bring Comcast to the forefront, right? I have resources within the work that I do. Comcast is looking for ways to bridge that with the people who need what we have. And I think, so you think about sort of the volunteering, right? And so as a board member, there's that. Comcast Cares days actually precede my time at Build, certainly. And that's Comcast comes out with teams to do all sorts of work for a nonprofit. And I can tell you that there have been a number of walls that have been painted within our building, which is great. When you run a teen center, those walls are nice and clean for about a half a minute, and then you need a retouch. And so those things matter. And I think more importantly is just being able to have a real honest dialogue, right? And so I can say, you know what, this is my challenge, and I really think that this is a space where Comcast could be effective. What do you think? And I think it's kind of the back and forth partnership that we have that allows us to be honest without fear of losing, right, a potential partner. And I think if you really want to do the work, both nonprofit and the corporate partners should be able to have honest conversations about challenges they may have, how we can make it work, and maybe thinking through some different strategies. And I've always felt that we've had that level of honesty and open conversation with Comcast. And
I would say, to your point, it's really all about the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. It's a two-way relationship between the two of us. It's mutually satisfactory for both of us. You mentioned Comcast Cares Day. The thing about us is that we are not a check writing corporation. We truly believe in investing in our community partners naturally, financially, but what's more important is to build that relationship and to have our employees engaged through our ERGs and through Comcast Cares Day and those sorts of events.
Mm-hmm. And I think about, I know that I've told our other nonprofit partners here in the community, I was like, look, you've got to connect with Comcast. And here, let me make an introduction to you, right? So when I think about what works, because of that level of relationship, and because I think there's always this opportunity to listen to what the need may be, I share that widely with our partners. And I'll give you one other example, just to kind of tie this piece up. Where Build is located in the Austin neighborhood in the city of Chicago, which is the west side, it's not only known as a food desert, but there's also a bit of a technology desert. And so I remember circling back and saying, hey, we need really high-speed internet, especially now. With everything that's happening, like our own operations are suffering because we don't have the strongest possible internet. And, you know, through this partnership with Comcast, they were able to get the infrastructure for fiber optic cabling. And, you know, that means everything when you think about, at no cost to me, let me be clear. And that means everything, right? Because you listen and you responded. And it wasn't, oh, sure, Adam, whatever you want, here it is. It was, let me take it back and see what I can do. And then it came back with, we can do this. And I think, Stacey, this is why I feel like the partnership is responsive, right? And if you said, no, we couldn't do it, we'd find another way, right? I'd come back maybe 2 weeks later and say, how about now, right? But I think that's to me what it feels like, again, as we said, like what makes a partnership work, how you share that broadly with others, because you want others to know that Comcast is a corporation that is going to do something about the constituents serve in the same way that we are serving the same level of constituents similarly and then differently as well.
Let me ask, how did you first come to be together? Tell us about your first date. How did this come about? How did it kind of evolve from whatever initial introduction there was?
So I would say that we have a phrase that we say that we date before we marry. And we were fortunate to have a senior executive who joined our company, who actually had a relationship with Bill prior to joining Comcast. And he actually brought that relationship with him. And that's my colleague, Jack Siegel, who is hopefully on the call right now. But yeah, but Jack brought Bill to us, introduced Bill to us. And as our strategy evolved, it just made sense that they would serve as one of our, you know, community partners in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
You mentioned Lift Zone, and I had read about this ahead of time, which I was fascinated by. Can you talk a little bit more about what that program is? I guess that's a Comcast program that existed that then benefits Bill directly. Is that right, Stacey? Can you talk a bit more about that?
Certainly. So one of the things that we've done is we've made a commitment to roll out 1,000 of these lift zones nationwide, across the country over the next 3 years, with a commitment of 200 by the end of 2020 across the entire company. And essentially a lift zone is a safe, clean space where a child can go and be able to receive connectivity and be able to do their homework. So it can be anything from to a gym to a church. But one of the things that we discovered in this COVID situation is that there was a need for children to have additional spaces. Sometimes connectivity is not available at their home, and they needed a place to go to be able to connect that was also safe. And this is our response to that issue. Yep.
And it fits right into exactly what we've done as an organization to respond to the community and our young people who, exactly as Stacey said, need a space that they can come that's safe and have connectivity. Because oftentimes when you have 3 or 4 people on the same Wi-Fi line at home, as probably many of us have lived through, you know your internet speed is very different at that point. And so it's tough when you have a family that's got 4 kids in school, some in high school, some in elementary school. And so being able to make this fit perfectly the way that it does is a great match.
That does seem like an absolute fit. But if I understand it right, the relationship with Build was in place before lift zones were conceived at Comcast. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So when that program came about, you had a partner in place who was an excellent candidate to use it, and I would even imagine pioneer it or get some feedback on the program. That's a fabulous thing. So that's great. Stacey, what you mentioned employees, and I've almost stopped asking companies who responds most strongly to your CSR efforts, because it's always the employees. But I'm curious if you have any more to say about the employee engagement in this process, that would be great. And also curious about other audiences, other Comcast audiences who recognize this partnership and who see it as a good thing for both partners.
Certainly. So in terms of employee engagement, Adam shared with you our Comcast Cares Day. And Comcast Cares Day is one day of volunteerism across the entire enterprise, where we go out into the community and we identify organizations, and they in turn identify projects. And our employees will come out and we do everything from fixing senior centers, painting, maybe or some even participated in food banks. So we're proud of Comcast Cares Day as part of our culture. We start planning for Cares Day literally in December the previous year for Cares Day to take place in the following spring. We also have an active and engaged employee resource group community as well. And our employee resource groups are actively engaged in terms of volunteerism and activities as well. So the combination of Cares Day with our ERGs, I would say that we have a engaged employee base that's committed to volunteerism as well. And the thing that's unique about us, while we're a international company, we're a very local company, and our employees are embedded in our communities where our customers live, work, and play. So it's a natural tie and fabric for partnerships such as with Build and with Cares Day and other sorts of activities.
Yeah. You know, that's a great point, Stacy. People always talk about community as a stakeholder for any business, but the community relative to the company can be vastly different. That's an excellent distinction about how your community is identified and how you can address it this way. So great. Well, that was terrific. Any final thoughts before we move on to speaker group 2? I think you guys did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Very good. All right. So our second group is Waste Zero is the corporate entity, Steve Lasauskas, and then Natick, Massachusetts is the municipality that is identified here as a key relationship, and that's Jillian Wilson Martin. So Steve is a VP of Government Affairs and regional VP of Sales with Waste Zero. He's been there for over 9 years, has a lot of experience with state and local governments before he joined Waste Zero, and has also done consulting in this area. And maybe more interesting is that Steve is an instructor and a instructor supervisor for a group that does traditional Japanese martial arts. So don't mess with this guy. But that's a great, wonderful background. I'd be curious if that training helps you in your business life day to day as well. But that's a different topic. But let's start with Jillian. Excuse me, Steve, talking about Waste Zero and your mission.
Great, thanks, Chris, and Jillian. Great to see you. And actually, Jillian is the reason. She's much more ferocious than she looks, so that's where the martial arts training comes in handy on a daily basis. But Waste Zero, we're a waste reduction company. So when you think of the sort of the normal understanding of the waste management business, whether it's solid waste, recycling, or composting, folks will hire a contractor either from a business standpoint to service a dumpster or from a residential standpoint to service streets, houses on streets. Those are typically logistics companies. They go to different addresses, pick up material, take it, transport it to another location where it is disposed of or processed. Waste Zero is different. We're not in that logistics business, and sort of what's involved to run a logistics business in some instances limits the ability to innovate because it's so very complicated. What we do at Waste Zero, we change the composition of the things that are transported. So right now, the average household in America is throwing away about 900 pounds of solid waste per person per year. Natick's probably down around 325. So what Natick has figured out, what Jillian and her colleagues have figured out, is how to take that 575 pounds per person per year or so of recycling, compost, textiles, other materials out of the trash and generate significant environmental benefits and significant financial benefits, and not to be underestimated, jobs for folks who can process recycling, deal with materials, and other things. So in this construct, one of the things I find particularly interesting is we, the private sector organization, almost function as the nonprofit in terms of serving Natick and assisting in their social mission.
Interesting.
And so, Jillian.
Yeah.
So for the town of Natick, so I'm the sustainability coordinator for the town of Natick, and I apologize. Speaking of logistics, there's a FedEx truck outside my window right now, so you might hear, there it goes. But in Massachusetts, at least, a lot of municipalities, and I think in other states at the county level, you're seeing more positions like mine, where my job is really to help our organization be more efficient, save money, and also protect the environment and the constituents that live in our community. And in Natick, we see a real demand for greater recycling, greater composting, and services that reduce our solid waste. And so having a partner like Waste Zero really helps us achieve that goal, while also realizing efficiencies that help our bottom line as a community, and use those dollars to, as was mentioned earlier, purchase more laptops for students during this time, or pay for other critical resources that are important to running our community and making it a place that people want to live, work, and play.
Julian, I'm curious what issues you were facing before you brought Waste Zero in. What were the needs that you were looking to satisfy that Waste Zero was able to come in and help you meet them?
Well, Natick has been a partner with Waste Zero for almost 20 years now. So before I started, so I've been working with the town for about 6 years. And before that, I spent about 10 years working on corporate responsibility with a company called Cone Communications. And when Natick first started working with Waste Zero, we were working with them because we had a problem, and that we had a budget that couldn't accommodate all of the service requirements that our community needed, and we needed to save money quickly. And so what happened was our community realized that we needed to do something about trash and how much we were spending every year on trash. And Waste Zero was able to provide some really great consulting guidance to the community and put us on a journey on a program that's called Pay As You Throw, where in Natick, residents have a special color bag that they have to purchase at their grocery store or local convenience store to put their trash in, and that bag has a premium associated with it. So it creates an incentive for residents to use less, or to generate less trash, and to put less out at their curb. And in doing that, with Waste Zero's partnership, we were able to reduce our trash by almost 50%. And we were able to save that money in terms of what we were paying to dispose of our trash. And at the same time, also optimize our routing such that we could, instead of having to collect trash every day, collect it 4 days a week. So having Waste Zero in-house to be a support for us was really critical to realizing those efficiencies.
Okay.
And Jillian, one of the things I think about our work together, and different than I think perhaps with a lot of communities and companies that we work with, is the engagement. And one of the things I've noticed is a number of communities, for instance, will say we're going to ban plastic bags, and that's sort of our main focus, but that's 0.3% of the solid waste stream. Sort of Natick came at it from a different place and said, let's create a structure that incentivizes waste reduction in all senses, or that provides the incentive for folks to not only recycle, but participate in compost and do other things. Could you talk a little bit about some of the other things that you've done? I mean, Pay As You Throw was the first, but I think it might be helpful for folks to understand how you've taken this one partnership and deepened it, and then broadened it even beyond us to working with other folks.
Yeah, I think our approach as a community to everything that we work on, whether it's waste or energy, is to really measure what we're working on. And there's that old adage in business that what gets measured gets managed, and vice versa. And so for our community, we've really taken that to heart. So, we started by measuring how much trash we were sending to the incinerator. And then we started wondering what is in that trash that we could divert to different places that could have greater value. And we did a waste characterization study where we actually analyzed what was in our trash with some consultants. And we were able to determine that 40% of the remaining trash was actually trash that could be composted. So it had a value beyond just burning it. And working with Waste Zero, we now sell compostable bags and offer composting services curbside to residents, where they can, instead of doing backyard composting, which again, we did some research on, and we found that residents will often maybe buy a backyard compost bin and never use it, or kind of have a failed composting mission. Working with experts like Waste Zero and other partners, we were able to come up with solutions to make it convenient for people and really understand how those our clients, the residents, wanted to interact with these programs and how we could maximize their participation. And then most recently, we've started a program that I think is new to New England, but is actually more common in the Midwest, and I see it growing in other places, which is a textile collection program where using a different color bag. So we have blue bags for trash, we have green bags for compost, and now we have pink bags for textiles, meaning like clothes or even like pillows and plush toys and some other small household goods that residents get these pink bags for free. And they fill them, and every other week on their recycling week, a company that we were connected with through Waste Zero collects those at no cost to the town. And those are diverted, saving the town money, again, on what we would pay to pick up and then send to the incinerator. So in the future, we're really excited because we're wondering, how many colors of the rainbow in terms of bags can we add to the curb. And I actually had a select board member who is one of our higher ranking public officials that's elected text me the other day a photo of all the different things he had at the curb and how proud he felt. Weirdly proud, he said, to be sorting everything. And so we're now exploring opportunities where, instead of having different trucks pick up these different items, can we innovate with partners like Waste Zero to collect everything in the same truck and have a truck filled with a rainbow of different bags all go somewhere and be sorted there, and again, create those efficiencies in terms of our operations, and also reducing emissions, because that would mean more or less trucks on the road. So I guess I would say one of the questions you had is about, what makes the relationship work for each of you. I think for us in Natick, just continuously innovating with Waste Zero and having them be a partner that's always thinking ahead and helping us think ahead really goes a long way.
And I certainly think from our standpoint, as Adam and Stacy mentioned, and I think is consistent with the engagement, is the ability to have open and honest communication. For us to be able to talk to Natick frankly, and Natick to be able to do the same to us. In a relationship, there are strong points and weak points, and times that are good and times that aren't. And to be able to have that those conversations where you talk about new ideas and needs, or new opportunities to partner without worry about what that means for what we're working on together. And I think one of the things that motivates both Natick and us at Waste Zero, we're a benefit corporation. So we are incorporated equally for our for-profit mission as we are for our social mission of reducing trash by 50% across the United States, creating jobs in manufacturing and other things. And we know that because we're both coming from the same place, we are both serving people and the public, it makes it easier to have that communication. Because we're all coming from the same place, we're all trying to achieve the same mission. We come from different desks, but we're all trying to make the world better, whether it be within the municipal confines of the town of Natick or other communities.
You know, you just went into an area I was going to ask about is the collaboration between the two of you obviously creates value for both. And I'm curious, Steve, for other, I'm sure you have many other municipal clients who don't collaborate with you. What do you think they miss? What benefit are they not gaining by not having as collaborative and cooperative relationship as you have with Native?
That's a great question. So there are a number of communities where we have relationships that are a bit more transactional. We serve a functional need for them, and that's it. And so what they miss is what one of the things Jillian indicated was the textiles recycling program. So plastic bags, as I mentioned, 0.3% of the solid waste stream. Textiles, depending on where you are, between 6 and 9% of the solid waste stream, and people need that material. Right? If I pull plastic bags out, I'm simply recycling plastic bags. But if I pull clothes out, that goes and helps somebody very, very directly and helps their children, improves their families' lives. And where the relationship is not as engaged, cities and towns don't get the opportunity, the folks we work with don't get the opportunity to implement programs like that. Or if they do, it takes much longer. Because with the town of Natick, with Jillian, we work so closely together, you know, we can have that very frank discussion about, hey, here's this new program that exists in Iowa and Texas and several other places, and Jillian can roll her eyes at me and say, oh, here's another idea. And then we can have that open, I think you're full of it. No, here's why it works. And that push and pull helps us both craft better solutions that benefit everybody, but also allows us to bring in a trusted way new ideas to the table. That, as Jillian mentioned, that rainbow bag program, that's an innovation that exists in Europe, very rarely exists in the US. And so for the town to be willing to consider something like that, to me, indicates a lot of trust. But that doesn't exist where the relationship is more transactional. That's a lot harder to get to.
Yeah. You know, one of the questions was about learnings, and I think you're on a key one there. And you know, stakeholder capitalism is a big term these days. And Business Roundtable changed the definition of what a purpose of corporation is around stakeholders. And I think it's true to say that a purely transactional relationship, there's not a stakeholder on either side. Stakeholders are where there's some mutual understanding of there's a relationship that is benefiting both. I mean, business is an exchange of value. Right. Any relation, there's an exchange of value, where there's monetary or other types of value. And that's really what makes a stakeholder relationship, is that understanding of the exchange of value, looking to maximize the value, not being afraid that your partner is going to get value that you don't. It's an ongoing cycle of value that goes to both. So that's a great example of that with the relationship that you two have. So very good. Any other closing thoughts before we move on?
I would just add that I think that, you know, maybe because Natick being the client in this us in this conversation and being public, we do everything we do is on public record, right? So when as a community, I don't really see our other communities as competitors with us. So we have a very collaborative relationship with organizations doing the same things as we do. So that might make us a little unique versus corporations. Though I would challenge corporations that are on this call to see where in their CSR efforts they might have
more faith than I do at the moment.
Collaborate without there being competition, because I think that's where we all what is it? The tide rises for all when we are all working together.
Excellent, great point. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jillian. That was great. That's a unique kind of relationship and a good one. So thank you for sharing that. All right, let's move on to our speaker group 3, which is Georgia Pacific, represented by Sheila Weidman, and Chris 180 are represented by Kathy Culbertson. Sheila, both of these folks have been in their roles for over 30 years, which is kind of unique and kind of nice to see. So there's tons of knowledge on the values and the beliefs and the needs for each organization, which I'm sure plays a lot in this organization. Hope to hear about that. So Sheila's the VP of Communications, Government and Public Affairs at Georgia Pacific, and over the years has been in virtually every communication marketing role you can imagine at Georgia Pacific. And Kathy's a licensed marriage and family therapist, which is obviously a fabulous background for what she does, and has been with Chris 180 for 33 years. So I think that would make you the founder, whether you actually founded it originally or
Right.
not. So that's wonderful. So let's start. Let's again start with Kathy to tell us a bit about Chris 180.
Well, first, I like to say I'm the stepmother who grew us up.
Yeah.
So Chris 180 is a mission and values driven organization. Our mission is to heal children, strengthen families, and build community. And Chris is actually an acronym for our values: creativity, honor, respect, integrity, and safety. And the 180 represents change. So we provide behavioral health services that help children, adults, and families who've experienced trauma change the direction of their life so that they become more productive, self-sufficient members of the community. So in addition to counseling, we provide training, safe housing, after-school programs, and real-world skill building. We're a big believer in outcomes. Outcomes matter. And transparency and responding to needs and gaps in the community. And we identify those by listening to the voices of who we serve. At the end of the day, our goal is to help people live fuller, richer lives and achieve their potential. We partner with a lot of organizations, but we're also very selective in our partnerships because we want them to be a win-win. And that's really important to us. And that kind of leads us to our partnership with Georgia Pacific. I'm going to turn it over to Sheila.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know, just like Kathy, you know, we believe our role is to improve society. And we do that by working with organizations that do remove barriers to children, youth, families achieving their full potential. You know, so those missions are very aligned. We're very focused on preferred partnerships. So that's not only with our customers and consumers providing products that they want and need using fewer resources, but it's actually deeper relationships, more mutually beneficial relationships. We focus very much on relationships being mutually beneficial and Georgia Pacific being the partner of choice. So that's not just for our customers and consumers, it's also for our employees and communities. So, you know, when we think about how successful Chris 180 has been in our community, really lifting people up and providing trauma-informed care so that individuals and families reach their full potential, they are so outcomes focused and results, and they get results. So it has been a magnificent partnership for more than 35 years.
So the relationship.
Yeah, predates me and Kathy. Yeah.
It's hard to do with the two of you.
I know.
I know.
Sheila, talk a bit more, if you would, about the types of partnerships beyond just Chris 180 that Georgia Pacific is interested in. I guess I'm just asking about your CSR strategy overall, how you define that, how you lay down the pathways that you then go look for partners like Chris 180.
Yeah, we really look for partners that are having a significant impact in the community. You know, we believe just like a business, a not-for-profit has to earn the right to grow. You know, I mean, we don't want to waste our investment and our employee resources of time and talent. So we do look for success, but we also look for those organizations that are lifting people up and helping people become independent and reach their full potential. So we work in the areas of housing inequality, healthcare inequality, education inequality. We do a lot of pro bono work and work in criminal justice reform so that those folks have opportunities. We have efforts around addressing persistent poverty. So it is all about giving people opportunities to be really contributing members of society and improving society.
And Chris 180 has a whole array of programs that touch every area that Sheila mentioned. Equity and opportunity and realizing potential are kind of fundamental core areas that we share. We in Georgia Pacific and Chris 180 share. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, we have certainly very much that we share in our efforts. And Chris 180 touches youth in foster care. They touch homeless youth and young adults. They have counseling centers. They serve families. They have full wraparound services. So they really are lifting people up.
Okay.
And we've really appreciated our partnership because as we pivoted during COVID to deliver food, which is not what we did before, and to support virtual learning and other things in the community that we did, but did on a limited basis. Our partnership with Georgia Pacific has really stood up under us to help us do those things.
Okay. So Kathy, I know you have a number of large corporate big names. I've looked at your website, a lot of companies to support you. I guess I'm curious how this particular relationship with Georgia Pacific, and I'm not asking you to disparage any of your other relationships.
I'm not. I won't do that.
But what kind of makes, it sounds like this one is somewhat special. So why is that? How did that come to be? And again, the idea of how do you kind of maintain that and execute that day to day would be of interest.
Well, each of our partners are highly valued. And one of the things that make partnerships work is unique attributes in each partner. And with Georgia Pacific, the marketing efforts that we have really worked at to tell our story, Georgia Pacific has been a huge partner with that. In fact, Georgia Pacific did some market research for us when we changed our name from Chris Kids to Chris 180. And Sheila was instrumental in leading that process with us. And so those are the kinds of things. So every partner has unique attributes they bring. And Georgia Pacific has been there for us for huge number of years, not only with financial support, but with talent and with employee investment that have been really important, because we originally thought it was just enough to go about quietly doing good. And people don't hear of the good you're doing, and they don't support you without you're letting people know all of the great things that you're doing. And Georgia Pacific has been really key in helping us be able to spread that word.
Yeah, and as Chris 180 has been so successful throughout the Atlanta community, they have, as I said, earned the right to grow. So they have grown. And one of the other ways that we engaged and our businesses engaged with Chris 180 and with Kathy's efforts is through, they built a new headquarters twice, and they renovated and constructed homes for keeping families together, and constructed, sort of an after school, place for teens and young adults, and addressed homeless youth with an apartment complex. And so we were their partner in all of those construction projects, a partner in all of those construction projects, because of course, one of the things Georgia Pacific makes is building products, so we were able to bring building products to the organization to help in those projects, as well as our away from home consumer products business could do, all the things they need for a restroom, the bath tissue and the sanitizer and soaps and things like that. So we have employees that are engaged, and our businesses are also engaged in helping to advance the wonderful success of Chris 180.
Great.
So you can't see the product because they're covered in my office by sheetrock and carpet. Georgia Pacific is there. Yes.
Sheila, I love your term, they've earned the right to grow. I mean, that's really a wonderful perspective of how a company would think about the various places they could invest their money. And I'm not on this panel, but I think a key point is that with all any corporate resource, you need to think hard about how you invest it. There's a ROI on philanthropic or altruistic activity as much as there's anything else. So that's a really interesting way to put it, is invest in people who have earned the right to grow, and you can bestow them the great gift of giving them the chance to do so. That's a beautiful thought. So thank you.
Yep, that makes it mutually beneficial for GP and for Chris 180. Right. You know, because we know the dollars that we're investing and the time and talent we're investing with Chris 180 are going to get results and have good outcomes.
Right. Okay. I think Kathy mentioned audiences, various audiences, and they're in. Which audiences of Georgia Pacific know about this type of relationship or are impacted by the work you do in this kind of area? And I know you've got a broad range of B2B and B2C businesses, but where does this show up on the business side for you?
I'm trying to understand your question. You know, we do have a lot of you know, B2B relationships, you know, and in our building products, you know, Kathy's very engaged with, you know, Home Depot and other, you know, building products companies where we're engaged. We do, you know, videos with Chris 180 where we tell the Chris 180 story. We've shared that information on our website. Our employees are engaged with Chris 180, so it's also, you know, employee engagement, which is very important to them. It crosses over many of our audiences, but it really is about improving society and improving our community.
Yeah. Well, that seemed to define a strong, engaged relationship. There's not one thing it does for you. There's many things it does for you. So that's great to hear. Okay. All right. So Kathy, what does the future for Chris 180 look like? And where do you think the two of you will go in the future in your relationship?
Well, we treasure our partnership with Georgia Pacific, and I certainly personally treasure my relationship with Sheila. So the continuation of deepening and strengthening those relationships are on the horizon for us. I think that, you know, Sheila chaired our board for a while, was on our board, chaired our board, and she has secured for us another really great Georgia Pacific leader, because we enforce our board terms. So you don't, for us to make sure the relationship sustains. So it's, you know, I think we have I think Adam said, we have a transparent, forthright relationship, both between Georgia Pacific and Chris 180 and between myself and Sheila. And that's something that I think is invaluable. And when you have shared mission, shared values, and you have an honest relationship, then you're pretty solid.
That's great.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say, since we have, you know, shared our time, talent, and treasure with Chris 180 for more than 35 years, we do feel a very vested interest in their success. So, you know, I think our employees and leaders at Georgia Pacific are going to stay engaged with the organization no matter what, and stay engaged with the board of directors, because we want to help perpetuate the success.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you both for that. That was great. That's a beautiful articulation of a great relationship. So thank you. I want to turn it up very briefly. Sheila, don't go away, because I want to start with you. At the end, I wanted to ask all of our corporate partners in this about the business value that they find in these relationships. And Sheila, I think you may have answered it quite well already, but that's a question I wanted to ask, because I'm a big believer personally that this whole mechanism works when it does make sense for the corporate partner. And again, you're looking for people to earn the right to grow. I think it's a wonderful screen of how to get to that. But just in a few words, what's the big business value that you see? Then I want to ask the same of Stacy and Jillian.
Yeah, I think it is about building preferred partnerships in the community where we really do know that we have mutually beneficial relationships, and that's going to drive success. So, we believe in investing in communities. It's part of our belief around improving society is that you need preferred partners in the communities where you operate. And we have 30,000 employees and more than 250 operations. So we are engaged in communities all across the country. And we do ensure that we're doing what we can with preferred partners to really do the most that we can to benefit the community.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Stacy, could you just briefly, a few comments on the business value in your relationship?
Absolutely. I think it's twofold. One, it's important to naturally give back to those communities where our employees and our customers live, work, and play, but also there's an expectation of our employees to give back to communities as well. And so from a community impact perspective, we want our companies to know that not only do we value them, but we also value our communities. And we believe that what happens in our communities also impacts us as employees as well. And so it's important to recognize those issues that are important to them, but also give back to those community-based organizations that address those issues that are important to our employees as well.
Great, thank you. Employees are such a big part of this equation, no doubt. And finally, Jillian, just a brief comment on business value of your relationship with Waste to Zero.
Sure. I mean, I think I articulated when we were talking that they actually just help us save money in how we operate our town, and we can use that money to pay for things like better parks and greater teacher pay and things that we know are important to the residents in our community. And I think building off a previous speaker's point, I think having that long-term relationship really does go a long way because we know we can rely on each other. We've been through ups and downs together. And, we are able to reach out and be open and honest about questions we might have. So I think working together in a sustained way really does make an important difference too.
Great, thank you. Well, thanks to everyone. I'm going to turn this back to Tyson. I think he's going to engage a few questions in the time we have left. Tyson?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Our first question is from Matt Fisher. Matt, do you want to turn your mic on and go ahead and ask? I know you and Jillian had a quick chat, but why don't you just ask out loud so we can all hear you have a quick exchange here.
Yep, can you hear me?
Sure can. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first question I have is, well, if you saw in the chat box there, for Natick, you know, as municipalities, communities, cities have incurred just tremendous expenses associated with COVID, and depending on the place, Black Lives Matter protests, you know, it would seem that in a year such as this, being able to turn on a dime when conditions turn on a dime, and when all of a sudden money is needed for overtime for first responders and you know, all sorts of things, that all of a sudden it's a cost drive. And if you've got these long established relationships, they can come in and help provide actual business, you know, value, or in this case, additional community value during a crisis, because those relationships were there. And so that was my question for Jillian, but for all involved as well, is, you know, are these the kinds of relationships? And I think I've heard a couple times where yep, on a dime, we can call in and, you know, get something going, meet the moment, so to speak. and not have to, reset.
Yeah, I'll just respond that we chatted briefly in the chat. And yeah, when our budget was really tight because less so really not related to Black Lives Matter, but because of COVID and the impact that has on local taxes related to restaurants and hotels, and also our state and the way our budget works is we do rely on some funding from what's called state aid, where state taxes help fund communities. And knowing that there was going to be a shortfall there, I live in Natick too, and so residents were asking, what can we do to save money and to prevent having to close a local elementary school is something that came up, and that's actually the school that my daughter goes to. And so, who did I call? I called Steve. I called Wastier, and I said, do you think we could get to every other week trash collection? What are some different things we could do quickly to try to save this budget and prevent the closure of my daughter's school and things that will really impact our community? And we had a lot of great conversations, and it didn't make sense then, and our budget ended up being okay. But I think having to meet the moment is something we're all facing right now, and having partners you can talk to about your challenges really helps you get there.
Yeah, and maybe just asking a follow-on question to the broader group in the same vein. Able to say our partnership helped keep a school open is just a tremendous, accomplishment, and something that seems like would be very good to share with, customers, consumers, and the community at large, just in boosting your social reputation. We're not the Mr. Burns character from The Simpsons. We actually are a vibrant member of the community and working that way. And I guess my question is, as events happen, whether in community as a whole or perhaps with a part of your business, do we have the kinds of relationships where you can bring in the nonprofit partner to have a seat at the table with the business leaders? Because I've experienced a few times we kind of get caught up in the CSR group. If we're a nonprofit trying to, build a relationship, they send us down to CSR. CSR says we've got an existing strategy. But in many ways, I think the business leaders could value tremendously in working on their problems and growing their business or defending their business. And have you guys seen relationships develop to that level where the nonprofits are working beyond CSR and working with the actual business leads?
Matt, this is Adam. Thanks for the question. Kind of going off of that and thinking about all of the events that have transpired over the last 6-7 months. And I think I may have shared it here that, Build has really been at the epicenter of everything that's happened, from the pandemic to the social unrest to the rising violence. And I think, I reached out, as we mentioned, Jack is on the board and has been with Build, and said, we are in dire need of internet for our young people. And how are we going to do this? We knew the impending school season was about to begin. We knew there was uncertainty between, was it going to be a hybrid, and then it switched to a completely virtual space. And I picked up the phone and was like, Jack, we've got to do something. I can tell you right now, our internet is not strong enough, but we've got to be here, open our doors, and have young people here and support them. And again, 2 days later, Jack was able to get back and say, hey, this just was in response to what's happening. And I think that level of responsiveness and thinking through, again, and what Stacey has shared is that you've got Comcast staff who live in these neighborhoods, right? So they work for Comcast, they live here in Austin and to the west and south sides of the organization. So to see the company they work for respond in such a great way, it's that back and forth of really being responsive in a time that honestly no one would have expected or predicted, with a positive outcome. So I think through all of this, we've learned to tighten that communication up. And now that we see sort of what the great outcome of that has been in partnership, there's a question in chat about, is there a process for this planning? I think the lessons learned through all this is, how do we put that regular communication and strategy in play together to start looking down the road, 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years out down the road. So I think that's been an important lesson learned through all this as well.
Thank you.
And if I could just add, so from our perspective, one of the functions we provide for NATIC is almost antenna in the field, right? So we have a particular expertise, we have a partnership with NATIC. And so one of the things, as we see trends happening with COVID, for instance, trash generation in the US is up about 30%, which is just an enormous increase in generation of what is already baseline, an enormous amount of solid waste. So we can call out some issues ahead of time for NATIC's consideration as they figure out how they're going to handle the expense issues associated with that. But taking Waste Zero out of it, all of the nonprofit partners have areas of expertise. And to Chris's point earlier about the transition from the purpose of the private sector is to generate jobs and have no other CSR responsibility whatsoever, that's our CSR, is from a Comcast standpoint, I apologize for referencing, I'm not Comcast obviously, but from a Comcast standpoint, they can address the technology issues. But can some of their partners address some of the family issues that our employees are having? Do our partnerships provide a mutuality? Can it go back and forth beyond helping the brand and the brand helping the nonprofit entity to something where the nonprofit entity, which is involved with helping children, which is involved in housing issues, all of our employees are experiencing these issues now. Mm-hmm. And open the door for an increased mutuality where we can learn lessons from each other.
Absolutely. And I would just add a follow-up point there. I mean, as you were speaking, you brought up, my thoughts of advertising that we were seeing in the early days of the pandemic. And you could see brands struggling to communicate or how to communicate their brand or how to, open up a growth opportunity while they pivot. And in some cases, there were successes. In some cases, I think you saw just, brands that were reaching one in particular, I thought Amazon did a great job by kind of a great job and a bad job at the same time. When they brought out the woman to say, going to work is like going to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, I just kind of, no, we know it's all not like that in there. So please don't tell us that. I know why they're sending us this message, because they want to show that they're concerned for employees, but the messaging was just off. And then later, what you saw about was we've made a big commitment to the environment. So if we can't talk about COVID directly, we're going to really talk about the environment. And it was during those times that I think a lot of brands got caught off guard and off foot, and ones that were able to react the fastest really generated some positive reputation, aspects to their efforts, because they were genuine, just like the ones that we're talking about here.
Yeah, talking about, working with the not-for-profit partner, interestingly, in the COVID environment, employees and families and individuals have struggled. And since what Chris 180 does is trauma-informed care, one of the things that they did was a Thursday lunchtime webinar that was open to everyone in the community. Well, since we had employees who were suddenly trying to work from home and raise their kids and, school from home and all of those things, that's stressful and very different in their environment. So we promoted those workshops that Chris 180 was doing to our employee base. Mm-hmm. So that was a way to take their expertise and share it with, 30,000 employees.
That's fantastic. I love it.
Okay, Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we got another question from Carol Mayer. Carol, are you there? Can you turn your microphone on? You want to go ahead and ask, or I can ask it for you if you're are you there?
Here. Yeah, can you hear
Go
me?
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sure can. Go ahead.
Sure. First, thanks for taking the time, all of you, to spend with us and share your experience. My question is around, many of you have talked to long-standing partnerships. And so Adam touched on this a little, but how do you go about strategic planning and developing some shared goals? And then secondly, how do you resource that and get your internal people? I imagine this probably isn't their only job, but maybe part of their job. But how do you get them excited about doing this extra work, if you will?
I think that's to our panelists, correct?
It is, and specifically, like Chris 180 talked about having a 30 plus year partnership. So I'm just curious, is there strategic planning that goes on about your shared sustainability goals, or how do you go about that?
Partnerships, this is Kathy. So partnerships are really important in the Chris 180 strategic plan. And they're, as Sheila said, they're important to Georgia Pacific. And so it's not a specific part of our strategic plan in terms of calling out Georgia Pacific and calling out Chris 180, but the whole commitment strategically to partnerships that are working for both of us is a part of our planning process. If that's what you're asking, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah, and I would say, I think Stacy talked about this, that the long-term nature of a partnership is really, is really important, that it isn't just writing a check and walking away, and maybe writing a check to different organizations every year. It really is about building that long-term relationship and that trust. So we work really hard to analyze and understand our partners' goals. So what are their goals? And, are they equipped to be successful, or how could we help them be more successful? So versus like an annual strategic plan or every 5-year strategic plan just on the partnership, we tend to focus more on what are the goals that we think we can contribute to and work together on.
Thanks.
Okay. I think that about does it for questions. Chris, do you want to get in one more word here, and then we'll close it up?
Just a thank you to everybody who joined the webinar today. And let me particularly thank our panelists for your great comments and your great interaction with each other. And it's great stories, great examples. So thank you for sharing those learnings with us. And I hope it benefits other folks on the line as well.
Yeah, huge thanks to you, Chris Hooper, especially. Thank you so much for moderating. It was really great. All of our 6 speakers, thank you for taking the time. It was wonderful to hear from y'all. Audience members as well. If anybody has any questions or comments or a subject you may want to discuss maybe having a webinar about in the future, contact me at tduffy@toprightpartners.com or go to our website at toprightpartners.com. And thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks again to our speakers and to you, Chris Hooper.
Thank you, Tyson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.